Fred, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to just kind of go back in time to a young man who is living in Palmer, just outside of Cleveland, and just say to him, just to let you know, when you grow up, you're going to be listed as one of the 25 most influential consultants in the world. You will have written many, many best-selling books. The Economist will refer to you as the high priest of loyalty in the future. A 10-year-old you would say what exactly?
What's a consultant? I have no idea what those things were. Parma is not the center of business leadership or thought, so I had a lot to learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you've definitely made up for that lack of knowledge in those early years. So, do you mind just for a little bit of context for the audience, just giving us? I know it's difficult, but just give us a little bit of an overview of your career to date.
Sure. When I got out of school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I might want to go to law school, but got cold feet, so I was a bartender for a while and learned some vital skills in that role. Ended up going to business school and joined Bain and Company between the first and second year of the MBA program at Harvard, and have stayed there ever since. So I've really only had one meaningful job in my whole life. Um, Although that job has evolved, it has focused on one issue, which was early on. I recognized accountants measured a business success in a framework of financial fictions, and they didn't take into account the most fundamental driver of business prosperity, and that simple idea that treating customers so they come back for more and bring their friends is at the core of a good business, a good economic business, a good ethical, moral business. Treating people right so they come back for more and refer their friends. That's pretty high-minded, but that's at the core of all prosperity in business. And accountants don't measure it today, and so many business leaders are going the wrong direction and essentially wrecking their business franchise.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And as you've kind of touched on, but most people will know, even if they don't know you by name, most business leaders will definitely know the NPS kind of system. Could you, it's just so interesting to kind of do the research into NPS. Obviously, it's been going for the best part of 20 years now, but clearly you've been a massive advocate of customer loyalty. You've written a number of best-selling books on the topic. Where would you say this passion came from? Within you, was there something like an early memory or something that you can remember, kind of the genesis of this? What kind of gave you that passion?
Yeah, I saw it. My uncle ran a series of large Fortune 500 businesses, and um, as I got to know his colleagues, his investors, and customers, I felt like those business communities were the best communities I had ever encountered. They were better than churches, schools, nonprofits. They really treated people right. There was a high level of accountability, but these were functional families, and they were very successful financially. And that model just wasn't widely shared in business school. The idea that your primary duty was to your shareholders and maximizing shareholder value made everything else okay, even if it was sort of ethically shady. That this is just so inconsistent. So I suppose the animating the drive was, how do I reconcile these two worldviews? Which one's right? And as I've come to recognize, really the only way to build a prosperous, sustainable business is that high road of treating people right. Um, and so I've tried to develop tools and techniques and frameworks and um, practical solutions that help leaders take that path. But I'm proud of what we've achieved, still only 10% of business leaders today believe that the primary purpose of a business is to make their customers' lives better. And that's just mind-boggling to me, because it's the only purpose that actually leads to positive outcomes in the long run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And since you came up with the NPS system, as I said 20 years ago, how do you think it's changed? You mentioned that statistic about 10% of business leaders looking at that view. Do you think it's got better, or do you think it's something that has largely stayed the same?
Oh, we've made progress. There are companies who have adopted Net Promoter, and in this open source community where people who want to use Net Promoter ideas don't have to pay me anything. They often get in touch, and sometimes they hire Bain and Company. Sometimes they hire me to come give keynotes or fireside chats. But for the most part, it's been a community who has adopted these ideas, put them to work, and shared them. And it has been astonishing. Apple was one of the early adopters of Net Promoter because their mission was to enrich the lives of their customers. And when they saw Net Promoter, they said, oh, well, this finally, here's a practical way of measuring progress on this mission. They hired a technology vendor, Medallia, who probably like a lot of other tech vendors at that time, but then because Apple shaped what Medallia did, because they're the gorilla that says, so what they wanted for their people and the branches and their customers is what they forced Medallia to create. And so the idea that everybody in an Apple store, an employee, has an iPhone in their wallet, and the instant customer feedback comes in from a customer they touched, they get it. And it's designed not to get people in trouble. They don't rank order everybody by their score and embarrass the people on the bottom quartile like a car dealer does. It's to feel the love. They want their employees, when they innovate and strive and succeed in making customers love doing business with Apple, they want them to feel the love in a way that they know their bosses and their bosses' bosses are going to be able to see and celebrate. So, take that and multiply by the thousands of practitioners who have used Net Promoter effectively, and you've built a whole foundation of intellectual an idea of how business should be run. And it's built itself into the tech vendors. It in other ways, certainly the economics are clearer to people. Nevertheless, it is so revolutionary to traditional MBA thinking that the primary purpose of a company is to make customers' lives better, as opposed to investors, or it's really fashionable today to talk about all your stakeholders as equally important. That's just wrong. You have to pick one. Obviously, you have to serve all your stakeholders and treat them up to this golden rule standard, or you're being abusive. But you have to exist. You have to have your purpose has to be to make one of those stakeholders' lives better, and customer is the only one that makes sense. Because when you solve a customer's problem and make them happy, that not only generates the back for more and bring their friends economic flywheel, it just makes it a better place to work. Because when you put employees as a leader, you put your team in a position where they can enrich the lives of their customers. You have enriched those employees' lives, because that act of service, where you hear the standing ovations and see them, that's the best thing a leader can do. So things align. But I in all honesty, the last book I wrote, Winning on Purpose, makes it clear this is still an uphill battle. It is a minority point of view. It's a majority point of view for the winners in business, but overall, it's a minority point of view.
Yeah, and taking a step back, you mentioned your latest book. It definitely builds on those initial ideas that you had for NPS. Could you just kind of give us an idea of how NPS has evolved over the years? It's definitely had its critics, but overall, and the sentiment of it is absolutely spot on. So could you just give us a bit of a timeline as to this evolution?
Yeah, when I started by focusing on the economics of loyalty, the microeconomics, this flywheel, and the metric I used was retention rates, and it's a good metric. Retention continues to be an important way of measuring whether you've made customers happy or not. If they defect, you have not made their life better. But it was too late in the process. Oftentimes a customer leaves after a long period of disappointments. And so it's hard to assign accountability. It's hard to get that customer back and solve the issue in a timely way. So I was searching for what would help businesses do a snapshot in real time. Are they building a customer an asset in a customer, or diminishing it, and eventually that customer would defect. And so I came, probably grudgingly, to the idea it had to be a survey, because I'm not a fan of surveys. They waste people's time. They're complicated. I spent a lot of time in my graduate courses at Harvard understanding sampling issues and statistical accuracy when you're so most people won't go to the trouble to understand all those things. So the instant you introduce a survey as your tool, you're bringing on a lot of baggage. That said, I said, if I have to have a survey, one question: how close could I get to perfection with just one question? And the answer was pretty darn close. Close enough that it wasn't worth asking questions 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 20 or 30. And so we tested which question was the best signal of a customer's life being enriched, so they would come back for more and bring their friends. And the best one was how likely you'd recommend us to a friend. 0 through 10 was the effective scale, because everybody gets 0. You don't have to actually put any words on that. People know what 0 means, and so forth. So you try to get all the friction out of this survey, and the likelihood to recommend on that 0 to 10 was the best predictor of customers coming back for more, expanding their share of wallet, actually referring friends, treating all of these signals that you have enriched a customer's life. And this one question did a great job. Now, could you get a more statistically accurate estimate if you asked 30 questions? Of course. If you could get the customer and lay down on the psychologist's couch and talk to them for 30 hours, you could get a better estimate. But of course, you don't have the time, and you need something practical. And this one question is powerful. Now, where did it go wrong? People stopped thinking about the difference between a overall relationship net promoter score versus an individual transaction, and they would confuse these things. They would start linking survey scores to frontline bonuses, which completely biases the system. And when customers know that, geez, I'm going to get Johnny in trouble if I give him anything less than a 10, or in a star system, if I give him less than 5 stars, his family won't be able to eat. I don't want that to happen. It was the company that screwed up with their terrible policies, not Johnny. So these links to accountability destroyed the reliability. And I've been fighting to try and get people back on track. But in the back of my mind, I know you cannot have auditable surveys. You can't stop gaming and cheating, or worrying that, I don't want to give my Uber driver 4 stars because I know they get fired. If they're 4.6 is the point where an Uber driver gets dropped from the system. So you've got everyone being taught as a customer, don't give anything less than 10 or 5 stars unless you want that person fired. So you get monstrous inflation in scores, and the score itself becomes a little bit less meaningful. Now, of course, every net promoter survey done by Fred's rules will have a why, an open text verbatim to explain why and how to get better. And so the richness is in that text. Nevertheless, people need accountability. And I agree. You have accountability for cash flow. You have accountability you need something auditable and measurable. And that led to the recognition that it's earned growth. It's this back for more and refer their friends. The signals that we need to hold teams accountable to for delighting customers is we need to keep track of how many of the customers they touched repeated and increased their purchases. And then the purest signal is how many of them referred their friends. Because that is the highest, when you co-brand your personal reputation and recommend a brand, that's the highest signal that you can give, that this company has enriched my life and I'm confident they'll enrich yours. That's pretty high standard. And I came to the recognition that businesses just don't measure that. They think referral is nice, but you have to measure it. It's so fundamental. And I bumped into a company called Mention Me, run by a Bain alum who was actually measuring referrals with a tech platform that reminded me a lot of what Medallia was like in the old days, getting started. But I saw, gosh, if you can have customers referring their friends through a tech platform where you could keep track of who's referring, how often, for the people who come in as referreds, how much they buy and how profitable and how they behave, you suddenly can get a pure understanding of what the economics that are driving your business. And it illuminates this flywheel, back for more and bring your friends, in a way that very few businesses have. The only businesses that understood it had brilliant, intuitive leaders that saw the referral was 98% of the insight. If I can treat people so they refer their friends, that's how I stay on this path. And I think the most exciting thing going forward in Net Promoter is getting referral into the measurable areas of accountability, so we can learn and hold people accountable on that dimension.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just full disclosure, you're talking to someone who worked in retail here in the UK, whose commission was directly linked to NPS. So, you know, it was a love-hate relationship, shall we say? But that company no longer exists. So I think that tells you what you need to know. But as far as NPS, when done right, it is undoubtedly one of the greatest systems that's been kind of created, and it's the stats I think are 2/3 of the world's big companies use NPS or a version of it, which I'm sure for you must be really exciting. But obviously over the years, are there any kind of examples that kind of stick in your head that go like this? This is exactly it, this company is doing it in the spirit in which I came up with it.
Well, there are far too many examples of people doing it the wrong way because they have the basic, their purpose is wrong. That their purpose is either to get rich or to be a great place to work or something else. Companies who really are committed to making their customers' lives better before any of the other stakeholders, then I see brilliant things. So I mentioned how Apple had created an app so all of their frontline employees could get the, instead of the traditional thing that big companies do, which is, gee, I'm going to buy tech at headquarters, so I'm going to buy tech that makes me, a headquarters employee, more powerful and have smarter insights. That's how most of the customer feedback systems have evolved. The best ones have empowered frontline teams with apps, and they want the information out in the front line so that the front line can feel the love and learn and run experiments and innovate. The headquarters comes second in terms of relevance of learning. And so, the Enterprise Rent-A-Car comes to mind, that they were the company that was really the forefather of NPS. They had a 2-question survey that went out to a sample of customers at every branch, and they held the team accountable in an appropriate way, because the scores were out in front of the team, 5 or 8 people that work in every branch. That accountability makes sense. And there's verbatim comments and a closed loop. When the breakthrough, Andy Taylor described to me, at the time the CEO of Enterprise, said that they call customers who give a failing grade. The branch manager calls them and apologizes and probes for the root cause and tries to figure out how to learn, and then shares that with the branch team. And that idea of local learning and closing the loop, very, very powerful. And to this day, most companies can learn a lot if they would just pay attention to how Enterprise uses their feedback system. The other important lessons in B2B, it takes subtle adjustments. When we put this into work at Bain & Company, Bain was probably the first place to ever adopt Net Promoter. And the temptation was for the center to try and hold all the partners around the world accountable to scores. And that doesn't work. That you can't use surveys that way. The only way a survey makes sense if you do it that way is when a third party runs it and it's double blind and you've got panels of customers of yours and your competitors, and it's expensive. That's available for some industries. And now we have a syndicated opportunity with NPS Prism. It's a business that Bain's created, which at an economical price can actually deliver trustworthy, reliable scores that you can hold people accountable to. But when you're doing the survey yourself and people know it, you just don't get very good results. What's the best thing? Let's see. Recently, my daughter taught me a lot. My daughter Jenny, I described this in the book, but she ran a customer service operation for the biggest wine retailer in America called Total Wine and More. And she knows I really love one question, but she said, Dad, I added a second one. And I go, oh, Jenny, God, everyone is adding questions. Is this really necessary? This is a lot of customers' time, and customers' time is precious to them. And she'd heard this before, and she's rolling her eyes like she always did at the dinner table. But she was right, because she said, we only ask the passives, and especially the promoters, a second question: is there anything we could have done better, or to make your experience even better? And she showed me that the verbatim comment explaining why they gave you a 10 was different for promoters than what they told you in the what you could do better. And it was very powerful insights. Why did you give us a 10? Jerry at the checkout was incredible. What could we do better? The light is out in the street lamp behind your store where I park, and it makes me feel creepy at night. And that's worth solving. And as promoters, customers who want you to succeed, they are the ones who give you these ideas that make your business better. So those are some of the examples of real brilliant steps forward that have become part of the Net Promoter System canon.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, coming back to Bain and Company, it is obviously a global consultancy. So, you've, I presume, been all over the world talking about the NPS system. And have you noticed regional differences or continental differences as you've gone along as far as culture goes? Is there anything that a certain part of the world is doing that you think, oh, well, we could really learn a thing or two from that?
Well, the thing I've learned is every culture loves this idea of treating customers the way you'd want to treat a loved one. It inspires teams to be part of a community that treats people that way. What's different is different cultures have different scoring biases on surveys. So if in a 0 to 10, Japanese squeeze the scale. They don't give many zeros and ones, and they don't give many nines and tens. Do they refer actually, this mentioned me that I mentioned to you, that actually tracks behaviors of customers? Yeah, Japanese do give referrals. They just don't answer survey questions exactly the same way as people in Latin America. Rural Americans have different scoring biases than urban Americans. You can go down that rat hole forever. And when you hold people accountable to a score, that's all you talk about are these subtle, inexplicable differences in scoring biases of different populations and segments. But that's not productive time spent. You just want to make sure you got a threshold of where is delight, where people are actually referring their friends, and where is failure, and create the appropriate closed loops to learn from those and take action in the right part of the organization. Don't just learn it at headquarters. So then headquarters has to go out with a bunch of PowerPoint slides and convince the front line that they know something that they don't understand. When the front line is dealing with those customers every day, that's an uphill battle. Design the learning systems to have a bias toward the right part of the organization who needs to learn these important ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just intrigued to know, obviously you mentioned before leadership and, individual leaders, doing a great job effectively and that kind of going down, throughout the business. Have you noticed a correlation between leadership and quality of leadership versus the kind of company culture, especially when it comes to NPS. Have you noticed that the companies with the better NPS scores are more likely to have good leadership? Is that a correlation that you could make?
Yeah, it's very powerful. When I can talk to a leadership team for 20 minutes and a handful of the frontline employees for another 20 minutes, and I'll know where they stack up in NPS versus their competitors. It is purely a cultural uh, belief system, and that's a lot of people want to put in an NPS system, but the leadership doesn't really believe in customer centricity. They just think it's hygiene. We should be serving all of our stakeholders, and they do this NPS, but then they keep putting in policies that are abusive of customers. Banks charging crazy fees, and online you'll search for a hotel, and then they tack on a resort fee that was sort of hidden in the background, and they made it hard to change your reservation at that point. It's any behavior you see out there that is abusive of customers and not the way you treat a loved one is a signal that the leadership is not good. I'm sort of skeptical of financial journalists. I don't want to offend people too much, but there's an awful lot of young people writing for big, famous, Wall Street journals and the Financial Times of the world. So I've gotten a little jaded on this. But one of the young reporters from the Financial Times said something just totally brilliant and made me recognize. She said, "So what you're saying, Fred, is that when you encounter one of these bad profits techniques, or someone is begging for a score, only a 10 is a passing grade, that's really a signal that the leadership of that company is not high quality." And I said, "Oh, that's the best insight in years. You're exactly right. When you see this going on out in the field, that's a signal. These are not good leaders. They may have good intentions, but they are not effective. And it may be that they don't even have good intentions. But that's the signal that you shouldn't be buying from a company like that. You don't want your kids working at a company like that. And if you read chapter 5 of my last book, Winning on Purpose, you'll see you don't want investing your money in the shares of their stock either. Because those bad behaviors, they might make accounting earnings go up this quarter, but they essentially ruin the potential of that business to achieve long-term sustainable growth. Because the only sustainable, profitable growth is this flywheel of treating customers so they come back for more and bring their friends.
I did laugh with doing the research when I found out that your personal investment strategy is linked directly to NPS, and I think it's done a right
Well, Bain
thing.
and Company for many years has had this eat your own cooking, or whatever metaphor you want. But if you believe in something, then live by it. And I think this idea of the right way to measure success, the right way to drive prosperity, is through getting companies to treat customers so they come back for more and bring their friends. I have insights into who that is. Some of it's from NPS Prism, which I talk about in the book. It's industry by industry. NPS Prism is showing who is best. And yes, I invested my own personal funds in those NPS leaders. Why does it predict the future better than these brilliant stock market analysts? Well, because they aren't really measuring the core driver of prosperity, back for more and bring your friends. NPS carefully measured versus competitors is a really powerful signal. Now, I think even better will be referral rates. As the mention me's and their competitors make it clear and make it easy to measure what percentage of the new customers from each company in an industry are coming through a referral from existing customers, you'll have an even purer signal of who you want to invest your money in. But my strategy has beaten the stock market over the last decade by more than most private equity firms or these billionaires who that's not the winning strategy. The winning strategy is figuring out which companies are generating referrals and that their growth is that most profitable source. It's customers, loving customers, treating them in a way that makes them want this for a loved one. That's the pure signal that you should search for if you want great investment results.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, again, talking about your latest book, it's definitely a little bit more focused on leadership directly than maybe some of your other titles have. And, if you think about incredible business people and business leaders that you've come across, could you just give, an account of an incredible story that you've had or an incredible encounter you've had with some business leader that's really, really stood out to you and that our audience can learn from?
Yeah, well, one I talk about in the book is Jim Sinegal, the founder of Costco, and he just example after example of how he got that company to treat customers right, all the way to how they structure it. It's a membership. Um, so you buy a membership in Costco, which is one of the largest retailers in America and maybe the world today. Um, so their profits are essentially guaranteed just by the membership fees. And then everything they do is to make the customer's life better because they have a fixed, they don't mark stuff up, they don't high low price and manipulate. They're always trying to get the best deal for their customers. Very generous returns policies. Um, and he told me about something they do in every business meeting is somebody always asks what's in it for the customer. It's an investment, it's a cost reduction, it's a negotiation with a vendor. But you got to be able to answer what's in it for the customer before they'll take that action. And it turns out that Jeff Bezos at Amazon actually lived close to Senegal. They're both headquartered outside of Seattle, Washington, and they had coffee together. And he heard these stories, and so Amazon took this same philosophy of always giving the customer a great deal. And in the early days, when I went online to buy something, you never knew if you're going to get a good price from Amazon. You have to go to eBay and these other places. You search around. Bezos made that go away. When you see a price on Amazon, you know it is a darn good price. You don't have to waste your time running around to see if. And at Costco, they even go the next step. He said, if this goes on price in the next night on sale and you get a better price in the next 90 days, we'll automatically give you that rebate. That's incredible. So I love stories from Costco, but then I had a similar story in my old college bookstore. I'm approaching my 50th college reunion, so I was going to buy a couple of chairs that have my college on the back, sort of in the crest. And I bought the two chairs, and then I get a email ad that the next week that now you get free cushions on these chairs. And I go, oh, geez, I just missed it. So I pinged the company with an email. They instantly credited it, no complaints, no, didn't make it complicated. You have to log into your website and change the order. No, none of that. They just did it for me. So Costco kinds of behaviors are flowing into the general fabric of how good businesses run themselves.
Yeah, it's really, really incredible. And yeah, no, thank you for sharing that story. And there's definitely especially post kind of lockdowns during the pandemic, there's definitely a sentiment that kind of customer service, definitely in the UK, has gone down. The excuses are there's teams working remotely, and but the long waits on hold, for example, to customer service and stuff like that for many places is incredibly frustrating for the consumer. So, have you noticed since the pandemic that that's kind of something that's happened a bit more, or is this? Do you think this is just kind of isolated to certain companies?
No, I think customer service has not gotten better, um, and there's probably a good case that it has deteriorated. And part of it is I think part of it is customers have been fed up in their personal lives. There's been a lot of sacrifice and frustration, and they just they they share some of that bad energy with the frontline employees who they feel maybe they've got more control over these guys than they do over their spouse and their kids, so they can kick the dog, and that starts a nasty spiral. So I think chapter 6 and 7 of Winning on Purpose talks about is everything is the customer always right? No. Customers can be abusive and inappropriate, and just like all of us, we're not always right. Your spouse is not always right. Now there's a caring, loving way of pointing that out to them and getting it back into a healthy relationship. And I think frontline employees need more help and more protection. You just can't have customers abusing your employees, and treating them badly. So there's got to be discipline. You get a warning, and then you're out. Uber kicks people out, or at least they used to. If they abuse an employee or do something that's not safe, the customer gets kicked out of the system. They do that on airplanes. I think every company ought to have a process where customers know they're going to be held accountable to be productive, good community members, or they can't do business there. And more energy, that's not simple. You need to have safeguards and education and a appeals system, all these things. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it because people have to feel like when they're part of a community, they are responsible for the success of that community. You can't have customers behaving like idiots and making it terrible for the employees and the other customers. And we've got to get a little bit better at that mutual feedback. And the models are starting. Airbnb and VRBO, or Uber. Customers rate the driver. Driver rates the customer. This is a good thing for the development of business.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you've as we've kind of discussed, throughout this whole conversation, you've clearly got a passion for customer loyalty. Even though you've been with Bain since, like you said, 1977, you're around all these incredible leaders. I'm sure it's incredibly inspirational. Have you ever thought, what, I'm just gonna start a business myself? Has that ever been a thought that you've kind of had?
I started a small SaaS company called Huddle Up. And I came to realize that you have to devote your whole life to that, not just 30 or 40 or 50%. So I sold it to someone in the software business. But yeah, my personal gift is not leadership of teams and helping them stay as optimistic as they need to, and inspiring them day in, day out. I different set of skills. I can help those people and have over the years, but I've sort of figured out what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
No, that's absolutely right. Fred, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. We are coming to the end of the podcast now. It's now time for a very special segment. We've teamed up with the Jill Dando News Centre to bring you the Good News Postcard. Fred, today your question comes from Finley, aged 10.
Hello, my name is Finley and I'm from St Anne's Church Academy School, and I have a question for you. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, Finley, what advice would I give to my younger self? I would say the most important thing I've learned is to hang around with good people. Who you spend your time with, it influences what you value, how you think about success, how you think about the community, and the best way to make your life better and to have greater impact is to make sure the people you're spending your minutes with are the kind of people who are living the kind of life that you'd be proud to live and aspire to live that way. There's a temptation, especially for my younger self, to hang around with cool people and handsome or pretty people. And I think the older you get, the more you recognize how important it is to see through the superficial and hang around with good-hearted people who have high standards of excellence and can help you achieve that yourself.
That is a brilliant question and a great answer from yourself. So thank you very much, Fred. And kind of lastly, we are business leaders, so we have to ask you the question, what makes a great business leader?
Great business leader understands that what makes a great business is treating customers in a way that enriches their life. It solves a problem. It makes them happy, or it makes them less troubled. And so committing yourself to building a team whose primary purpose is making those customers' lives better than anyone else can make them, it puts you on the right path. There's 1,000 books written about how to do the small things on that path better, but they don't really contribute a lot unless you're on the right path.
No, definitely. Fred, again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Do you have any final words for our audience today?
Yeah, read Winning on Purpose, not just yourself, but give it to people in your organization to have study groups. Go to the LinkedIn entry a few months ago with a company called Built, B-I-L-T, who has shown how the CEO is using this book in a reading discussion series across teams throughout his company in a way to build a customer-centric culture. It's genius.
Absolutely. And where can people kind of follow your journey online and also find out more information about Mention Me?
Well, I would say both Mention Me, go to their website. You'll learn a lot. For me, go to LinkedIn, where I'm active with my newsletter, and follow me and sign up for the newsletter. And also go to Bain's website, netpromotersystem.com. You'll be glad you did.